The rain-slick streets of Portland gleamed under the relentless Pacific Northwest drizzle, turning the early morning into a watercolor blur of grays and muted greens. Elena Vargas gripped the steering wheel of her old Subaru, the wipers thumping a steady rhythm like a heartbeat she couldn't quiet. At 34, she was a rising star in the architecture firm downtown, sketching blueprints for eco-friendly high-rises that promised to redefine the skyline. But right now, all she could think about was the gnawing ache in her chest, the kind that had no foundation, no load-bearing walls to hold it up. She pulled into the lot behind Brew Haven, the tiny coffee shop tucked into the Pearl District, its neon sign flickering like a hesitant invitation. It was supposed to be routine, a black Americano to fuel another 12-hour day. But 3 weeks ago, on a whim after a late-night deadline, she'd lingered too long at the counter, trading small talk with the barista whose laugh cut through the steam like sunlight-piercing fog. Now that laugh haunted her dreams, pulling her back here against every rational blueprint in her head. She killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the patter of rain on the roof. Elena exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the window for a split second before it vanished. Why was she doing this? She had a life, stable, measured, the kind her immigrant parents from Mexico City had sacrificed everything for her to build. Dates with men who checked boxes on apps, polite dinners that ended in handshakes, not heartbeats. But Riley O'Malley? The freckled redhead with the guitar-callous fingers and a voice like aged whiskey? She was a curveball in a world of straight lines, and Elena's pulse raced at the mere thought of her name. Pushing open the door, the bell tinkled softly, a chime that felt too cheerful for the storm brewing inside her. The air inside was thick with the rich, earthy scent of freshly ground Ethiopian beans, mingled with the faint vanilla from yesterday's scones. Behind the counter, Riley moved like she owned the rhythm of the place, mid-30s with that effortless Irish-American lilt in her step, her auburn hair cropped short and tousled from sleep, still wearing the faint trace of last night's stage makeup under her eyes. She was slinging lattes for the morning rush, her flannel shirt rolled up to her elbows, revealing tattoos of musical notes curling like vines up her forearms. Aspiring folk singer by night, barista by dawn, Riley had told Elena that much over their stolen chats, her blue eyes crinkling with that self-deprecating humor that made Elena's stomach flip. "Morning, stranger," Riley called out, spotting her immediately, her voice warm as fresh espresso, cutting through the hum of the espresso machine and the low murmur of patrons scrolling phones. She wiped her hands on her apron, the fabric whispering against her jeans, and leaned on the counter, close enough that Elena caught the subtle scent of her citrus shampoo mixed with coffee grounds, intoxicating in its simplicity. Elena forced a smile, sliding her order across the counter. "The usual. Extra shot today, deadlines don't sleep." Her voice came out steadier than she felt, but her fingers trembled slightly as they brushed the edge of the wooden surface, scarred from years of hot mugs and hurried mornings. Riley nodded, her gaze lingering a beat too long, those eyes tracing the faint lines of exhaustion around Elena's mouth. "Rough night sketching empires again? You look like you could use more than caffeine. Maybe a scone? On the house." She plated one without waiting, the blueberries bursting dark and juicy against the golden crust, and slid it over with a wink that sent a shiver down Elena's spine, not from the chill seeping in from the door, but from the way Riley's presence filled the space between them, electric and undeniable. As Riley frothed the milk, the hiss of steam rising like a sigh, Elena watched her, really watched. The way her shoulders rolled with quiet strength, the scar on her knuckle from a guitar string snap years ago, the easy grace that spoke of late-night open mics and smoky dives and mornings piecing together rent from tips. Riley had grown up in a rowdy Boston suburb, trading East Coast blizzards for Portland's endless rain, chasing a dream her construction worker dad had called fool's gold. But here she was, pouring Elena's coffee with a focus that felt personal, intimate. The cup hit the counter with a soft clink, steam curling up like a secret. "You ever think about what you'd build if money wasn't the blueprint?" Riley asked, leaning in, her voice dropping to that husky timbre she saved for confessions. The question hung there, simple yet loaded, as the rain tapped insistently on the window behind her. Elena paused, her fingers wrapping around the warm porcelain, the heat seeping into her palms like Riley's gaze into her thoughts. Something real, she murmured, the words slipping out before she could cage them. Not towers. A home. Walls that hold more than wind. Her heart thudded, the admission tasting like vulnerability on her tongue. Raw, unfiltered. The kind she buried under client meetings and solo Netflix binges. Riley's smile softened, her eyes darkening with something unspoken. A flicker of recognition that made the air between them thicken. I'd write the soundtrack, she said quietly, her thumb brushing the counter near Elena's hand. Not quite touching but close enough to spark. The moment stretched, the shop's ambient jazz fading into white noise, until a customer cleared their throat behind Elena, shattering it. She grabbed her coffee and scone, mumbling a thanks, her cheeks burning as she retreated to her usual corner table by the window. The rain blurred the world outside into abstract shapes. Pedestrians huddled under umbrellas, cyclists splashing through puddles, but inside, Elena's mind raced. It was just coffee. Just conversation. But as she bit into the scone, the flaky crust crumbling sweet and tart on her tongue, she couldn't ignore the pull anymore. The way Riley's laugh echoed in her ears long after she left, the phantom brush of fingers that lingered like a promise. By noon, sketching at her desk downtown, Elena's lines blurred. Not from fatigue, but from the impossible what-if blooming in her chest. That afternoon, the firm buzzed with the chaos of a new bid. A waterfront development that could make or break her promotion. Elena's cubicle was a fortress of graph paper and coffee stains, the hum of printers and murmured phone calls a familiar drone. But her focus splintered, drifting back to Brewhaven, to Riley's crooked grin. She texted a coworker about load calculations, but her thumb hovered over her phone's home screen, tempted to scroll through Riley's sparse Instagram. Grainy shots of gigs at the Alberta Street pub, her strumming under dim lights, voice raw with longing and songs about lost chances. By 5, the rain had eased to a mist, and Elena found herself driving back, the Subaru's tires humming over wet asphalt. Parked curbside, she watched through the window. Riley wiping down the counter, humming a melody that carried faint strains of regret, her hips swaying slightly to an invisible beat. Elena's breath caught, the curve of her neck exposed as she reached for a high shelf, the way her flannel clung just so. This wasn't architecture. This was alchemy, turning mundane moments into something molten. She stepped inside, the bell's chime announcing her like a heartbeat. Riley looked up, surprise lighting her face. Then something deeper, relief? Hope? Back already? Must be my charm. She teased, but her voice held an undercurrent, a question wrapped in playfulness. Elena hesitated, the door clicking shut behind her, sealing them in this bubble of warmth. Or your scones, she shot back, but her eyes betrayed her, locking onto Riley's with an intensity that made the barista pause mid-wipe. The shop was emptying, the last patrons trickling out into the dusk. Riley untied her apron, the strings whispering loose, and rounded the counter. Stick around? Closing's in 10. I could use a second opinion on this new blend. Her words were casual, but the way she stood, close, unguarded, spoke volumes. Elena nodded, sinking into a stool, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. As Riley measured beans, the grinder whirring to life, they talked, easy at first, about Portland's food cart pods and the best hiking trails up in the gorge. But the conversation veered, like a path worn smooth by hidden streams. Riley confessed the sting of a recent breakup, her ex a drummer who'd bailed for LA Dreams, leaving her with half-written songs and a hollow stage. Feels like starting over, she said, voice cracking just a fraction, her fingers tracing the rim of a mug as if memorizing its edge. Elena leaned in, the counter no longer a barrier. Starting over's not failure. It's redesign. She reached across, her hand covering Riley's for a heartbeat, skin warm, pulse sinking, and pulled back too soon, the contact electric, lingering like ozone after lightning. Riley's breath hitched, a soft sound in the quiet shop, her eyes searching Elena's face. What are you redesigning then? The question was soft, loaded, the air between them humming with possibility. Elena swallowed, the taste of earlier coffee bitter on her tongue. Everything. she whispered, the word a confession, a crack in her carefully constructed facade. Outside, the mist thickened into night, street lamps blooming like fireflies. Inside, as Riley locked the door and flipped the sign to closed, the world narrowed to this. Two women, cups in hand, stepping into the unknown. Elena's heart raced, a blueprint unfolding. Not of steel and glass, but of stolen glances and tentative touches. It was just coffee, she told herself one last time. But the lie dissolved like sugar in hot water, sweet and irreversible. They wandered out into the cooling air, shoulders brushing as they strolled toward the Willamette River, the city's bridges arching like veins under the sodium glow. Riley's laugh bubbled up again, lighter now, sharing a story of her first botched open mic. Voice cracking on high notes, crowd thinning like smoke. Elena chuckled, the sound foreign yet freeing, her arm looping casually through Riley's as they paused on a bench, the river's murmur a low understir to their breathing. You make this city feel smaller, Elena admitted, her head tilting toward Riley's shoulder, the wool of her sweater soft against her cheek. The admission hung vulnerable, scented with the faint brine of the water, and the vanilla clinging to Riley's skin. Riley turned, her face inches away, blue eyes reflecting the bridge lights like stars caught in water. Or bigger, she murmured, her hand rising to tuck a stray wave behind Elena's ear, fingers lingering on the curve of her jaw. The touch was featherlight, a question in motion, and Elena didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, their foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the space between, warm, hesitant, alive. When their lips met, it was tentative at first, a brush of softness testing boundaries, tasting of coffee and courage. Then deeper, Riley's hand cupping Elena's neck, pulling her closer, the world tilting on its axis. Elena's fingers tangled in Riley's hair, the strands cool and damp from mist, her body igniting with a fire she'd long suppressed. The kiss broke with a shared gasp, foreheads pressed together again. Laughter bubbling up through the shock, nervous, joyous, real. I didn't plan this, Elena whispered, her voice thick, heart pounding against Riley's chest like a door finally unlocked. Riley smiled, thumb tracing Elena's lower lip, eyes shining. Plans are overrated. This feels right. They walked back in companionable silence, hands intertwined, fingers lacing like lyrics to a melody half-sung. At Elena's car, the goodbye lingered. Another kiss, slower, savoring the curve of mouths and the sigh that escaped Riley's throat. Driving home through rain-swept streets, Elena's reflection in the rearview showed flushed cheeks, swollen lips, a woman reborn. But as the high faded, doubt crept in like fog off the river. What now? Her family's expectations, the firm's glass ceilings for women like her, Latina, out uncharted. And Riley, free-spirited, but scarred from losses that made her guard her heart like a fragile cord. That night, in her loft overlooking the Hawthorne district, Elena lay awake, sheets tangled around her legs, the city's distant hum a lullaby she couldn't heed. The taste of Riley lingered, a ghost on her tongue, stirring dreams of mornings not spent alone. But dawn brought clarity, sharp as a draftsman's line. This feeling wasn't going away. It was building layer by layer toward something seismic. Weeks blurred into a rhythm Elena hadn't known she craved. Mornings at Brew Haven evolving from quick grabs to lingering breakfasts, Riley slipping notes into her to-go cups. Lyrics scribbled on napkins, for the architect who builds my days. Elena would unfold them at her desk, the paper crinkling under her fingers, words like your smile, a skyline I chase, making her bite her lip to stifle a grin amid spreadsheets and site visits. Portland's autumn deepened, leaves carpeting the streets in crimson and gold, the air crisp with the scent of wood smoke from neighborhood fireplaces. Their dates unfolded organically. A hike up Forest Park where Riley strummed her acoustic guitar at a clearing, voice weaving through pines like sunlight. A rainy evening at a food cart pod, sharing tacos under a shared umbrella, grease-slicked fingers brushing as they laughed over spilled salsa. But beneath the ease, tension simmered, a fault line waiting to shift. Elena's phone buzzed one crisp October afternoon during a client meeting, her firm's glass-walled conference room overlooking the Burnside Bridge. It was her mother, Sophia, voice crackling over the line from their family home in East LA, transplanted roots now in Portland suburbs. Mija, when are you bringing someone home? Your tia asks every Sunday. The words landed like rebar in wet concrete, heavy and setting fast. Elena murmured excuses, her free hand twisting the silver bracelet her abuela had given her, cool metal grounding her as visions of Riley flickered unbidden. Her head thrown back in laughter, throat exposed, pulse visible under pale skin. She hung up, the room's fluorescent buzz amplifying her isolation. Across the table, her boss, Mark, a silver-haired veteran with a penchant for backslaps, leaned in. Everything good, Vargas? You seem distracted. This waterfront project's our ticket. Can't afford slip-ups. His tone was paternal, but Elena heard the subtext. Prove yourself again as the only woman of color in the room. She nodded, sketching a revised facade on her tablet, lines sharp and unyielding, but her mind wandered to Riley's loft in the Alphabet District, a cluttered space of vinyl records and half-tuned guitars, where they'd spent last weekend tangled in sheets that smelled of lavender detergent and sweat. That evening, Elena arrived at Brew Haven unannounced, the shop's windows fogged from the evening rush. Riley was behind the counter, sleeves pushed up, a streak of flour on her cheek from experimenting with cinnamon rolls. Her eyes lit up but faltered as she read Elena's face, the tight set of her jaw, the shadows under her eyes. Bad day building the future? Riley asked, rounding the counter to pull her into a quick hug, arms strong around Elena's waist, chin resting on her shoulder. The embrace was solid, scented with yeast and warmth, but Elena stiffened slightly, the weight of unspoken words pressing down. They closed up together, Riley's hands deft on the locks, the click echoing in the emptying space. Outside, the streetlights cast long shadows, leaves skittering like whispers across the pavement. Walk with me, Elena asked, voice low, laced with the gravel of unshed tears. They headed toward the North Park blocks, the path crunching underfoot, distant traffic a low roar like ocean waves. Halfway down the trail, under a canopy of maples shedding their fiery leaves, Elena stopped. My family's coming up next month for Thanksgiving. They want to meet someone. The words tumbled out, heavy with implication, her breath visible in the chill air. She wrapped her arms around herself, the wool of her coat rough against her skin, as if armor could hold back the storm. Riley paused, turning to face her, hands shoved in her pockets, shoulders hunching against the cold. And that someone is me. Her voice was steady, but her eyes, those ocean blue depths, held a flicker of fear, memories of her ex's accusations echoing. Too much, too soon, too everything. Elena nodded, stepping closer, her gloved hand finding Riley's cheek, thumb tracing the freckles like constellations. If you'll come. But it's not just dinner. It's explaining. To people who still light candles for saints who don't approve. Her voice cracked, the raw edge slicing through the quiet, a leaf detaching overhead to spiral down between them. Riley's breath caught, a soft hitch that Elena felt in her chest. She pulled Elena's hand down, interlacing their fingers, the leather of gloves creaking. I get it. My distill sends articles about traditional values every Easter, like I'm the black sheep he can't shear. She laughed, but it rang hollow, chased by a sigh that fogged the space between. Last girlfriend? We hid for months. Felt like singing with a muzzle on. The admission hung, vulnerable as exposed wiring, and Elena's heart twisted. She tugged Riley to a nearby bench, the wood damp and cold seeping through their jeans as they sat, thighs pressed together for warmth. I don't want to hide, Elena whispered, her head dropping to Riley's shoulder, the steady rise and fall of her breathing a lifeline. But the thought of their faces, it terrifies me. Riley wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close, lips brushing Elena's temple in a kiss soft as falling leaves. Then we face it together. Like a duet, off-key at first but harmonizing by the chorus. Her words vibrated against Elena's skin, warm and resolute, but as they sat there, the wind picking up with a low moan through the branches, doubt lingered like the scent of rain on concrete. Back at Riley's loft, the tension uncoiled in the dim glow of string lights draped over exposed brick. They moved slow, deliberate, coats shed with whispers, shirts unbuttoned amid kisses that tasted of salt and need. Riley's hands mapped Elena's body like a song she knew by heart, fingers tracing the curve of her hips, eliciting gasps that mingled with the creak of the bed frame. Elena arched, nails digging into Riley's back, the scratch of skin on skin a raw symphony, her moan swallowed by Riley's mouth. Afterward, spent and tangled, the room heavy with the musk of their joining, Elena traced lazy patterns on Riley's stomach, the rise of ribs under her palm a quiet wonder. "Tell me about the first time you knew," Riley murmured, voice drowsy, fingers combing through Elena's dark waves, the strands silky and cool. Elena hesitated, the ceiling fan whirring overhead like a distant helicopter. "College in Berkeley. A roommate blonde, always sketching nudes. One night, after too much wine, her hand on my knee. It was like the world tilted. She swallowed, the memory sharp as fresh ink. But I buried it. For the degree, the job, the good daughter script." Riley shifted, propping on an elbow, her gaze soft in the low light. "No more bearing. We're the story now." She kissed Elena's forehead, lingering, the press of lips a seal on the promise. But promises tested in the fire of reality. The next day, Elena's firm landed the waterfront bid. Champagne popped in the office amid backpats and toasts. Mark clapped her shoulder. "Knew you had it, Vargas, sharp as a tack." Pride swelled, but so did the isolation. No one to share it with, not yet. She texted Riley a photo of the contract, heart emoji trailing, and got back a voice note. Riley's voice, husky from morning practice, singing a snippet of a new tune. "Your victory's my verse, babe." Elena played it on loop during her commute, windows down, wind whipping her hair, the city's pulse syncing with hers. Thanksgiving loomed like a thunderhead. Sophia and Carlos arrived, suitcases thumping in Elena's loft, the air filling with the sizzle of carnitas frying in the kitchen. Cumin and lime sharp, a taste of home. They fussed over her singlehood, Carlos grumbling about wasted potential over cervezas, his calloused hands, remnants of factory work, gesturing broadly. Elena smiled through it, chopping onions that stung her eyes like unshed tears, until the doorbell rang. Riley stood there, pie in hand, apple lattice crust golden, her hair neat, flannel swapped for a button-down that hugged her frame just so. "Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Vargas. I'm Riley, Elena's friend from the coffee shop." Her voice held that Boston edge, charming yet steady, but her hand trembled slightly as she extended it. Sophia's eyes narrowed, appraising, then softened at the pie. "Come in, Mija. Smells like heaven." They ate at the scarred oak table Elena had salvaged from a job site, laughter forced at first over stories of Elena's childhood mischief, stealing mangoes from the neighbor's tree, knees scraped and triumphant. Riley chimed in with tales of Boston blizzards, building igloos taller than herself, her anecdotes drawing Carlos into chuckles, his fork pausing mid-bite. But as plates cleared, the air thickened. Sophia cornered Elena in the kitchen, sponge scrubbing a pot with vigorous strokes. "She's lovely, but is this serious? Or just a phase like that artist girl in college?" The words landed soft but cut deep, the soapy water sloshing like Elena's churning gut. "Mom, it's real," Elena hissed, voice low, hands gripping the counter's edge, knuckles whitening. "She's real to me." Sophia sighed, a long exhale scented with cilantro, setting the pot down with a clunk. "I just want you happy, Elena. Not alone." Tears welled, mirroring her daughter's, and they embraced, the hug fierce, bodies shaking with the weight of love and fear. In the living room, Riley and Carlos bonded over baseball. Red Sox versus Dodgers, voices rising in good-natured ribbing, the crack of laughter echoing off the brick walls. Later, as snow flurried unexpectedly outside, Riley pulled Elena aside on the balcony, the city twinkling below like a promise kept. "We survived," she whispered, hands framing Elena's face, thumbs brushing away a stray tear. Their kiss was urgent, flavored with pie crust and relief, bodies pressing close against the railing, the chill nipping at exposed skin. But survival bred complacency, and cracks formed subtly. Riley's gigs picked up. A residency at a Selwood tavern, late nights strumming for tips and applause. Elena's project ramped, site visits stretching into evenings, blueprints bleeding into weekends. Texts went unanswered, replaced by quick pecks at the door. One December night, Elena arrived at Riley's after a 12-hour day, mud caked on her boots from the waterfront dig, exhaustion clinging like damp earth. Riley was sprawled on the couch, guitar across her lap, notebook scribbled with half-formed bars. "Hey babe, how was the mud pit?" Her tone was light, but her eyes flicked back to the page, fingers plucking a discordant note. Elena peeled off her coat, the fabric heavy, dropping it with a thud. "Long. Yours." She leaned in for a kiss, but Riley turned her head slightly, mumbling about a riff she couldn't nail. The dismissal stung sharp as rebar. "Everything okay?" Elena asked, sinking beside her, hand on Riley's knee, the denim warm but the muscle tense beneath. Riley set the guitar aside, the strings humming faintly in protest. "Just pressure. Label scouts coming to the next show. If I blow it." She trailed off, rubbing her temples, the room's air thick with unspoken strain. Elena nodded, pulling her close, but the embrace felt obligatory, bodies aligning without the spark. "You'll kill it. You always do." Words rang hollow, chased by the tick of the wall clock, marking time they weren't sharing. As Elena drove home through flurries that stuck to the windshield, doubt gnawed. Was this the harmony, or just a pause before the bridge collapses? The feeling, once impossible to ignore, now whispered of fractures, demanding repair before the structure gave way. Winter clamped down on Portland like a vice, the Willamette freezing at the edges, holiday lights strung across bridges twinkling against gunmetal skies. Elena threw herself into the waterfront project, dawn patrols on the site where cranes loomed like skeletal giants, the clang of metal on metal echoing her inner turmoil. At 34, she'd always prided herself on control, measured pours of concrete mirroring her life's foundations, but Riley had upended that, stirring emotions as volatile as unset mortar. Their nights together were feverish oases. Bodies colliding in the dark of Elena's loft, skin slick with sweat, moans swallowed by pillows as Riley's fingers traced blueprints of pleasure along her spine. Yet mornings brought the chill of distance, coffee brewed in silence, glances skimming like stones over water. Riley's residency at the Rusty Anchor in Selwood became her anchor, the tavern's dim interior thick with the haze of craft alesh and murmured conversations. She poured her soul into sets, voice raw, guitar weeping notes of longing and loss, drawing crowds that swelled from locals to scouts. One January night, after a blistering performance of her original Riverbend Heart, a wiry producer from Seattle named Jax cornered her backstage, amid the clutter of amps and empty pint glasses. "Kid, you've got fire. Demo tape my office next week." His handshake was firm, eyes gleaming with the promise of deals, but Riley's stomach knotted, the high crashing into fear. What if it was another false dawn? Like the Boston label that ghosted her demo. She texted Elena at midnight, thumbs flying. "Scout loved it. Freaking out. Come over." The reply buzzed back instant. "On my way. Proud of you." Elena arrived with takeout pho from a Divisadero street cart. Steam rising from styrofoam bowls scented with star anise and basil, the broth a balm against the night's edge. They ate cross-legged on Riley's rug, the loft's radiator clanking like an old friend's gossip. "This could be it," Riley said, slurping noodles, her knee bumping Elena's deliberately. But her voice wavered, the fork pausing mid-air, broth dripping like unshed worry. Elena set her bowl down, the ceramic warm against her palms, and cupped Riley's face. "It is it. Because you're it." The kiss that followed was deep, unhurried, tongues tangling with the spice of lemongrass, hands roaming under shirts to map familiar territories, the dip of waist, the swell of breast. They tumbled to the couch, clothes shedding in a trail of denim and lace, Riley's mouth hot on Elena's collarbone, eliciting a gasp that fogged the nearby window. Elena's legs wrapped around her, heels digging into the small of Riley's back, urging deeper, the rhythm building like a crescendo, breaths ragged and synced until release shuddered through them, leaving echoes in the quiet. Curled afterward, Elena's head on Riley's chest, the steady thump of her heart a lullaby, Riley confessed deeper fears. "What if success pulls me away? Tours, spots in Nashville or wherever. Her fingers stilled in Elena's hair, the strands tangling like her thoughts. Elena lifted her head, eyes locking, the lamplight casting shadows that danced across freckles. Then we build bridges. Long-distance blueprints, visits, calls, all of it. But even as she said it, the words tasted like compromise, the project's cranes flashing in her mind. Structures that withstood storms, yet required constant vigilance. The demo recording session in Seattle tested that vigilance. Riley drove up in her battered pickup, the i5 humming under tires slick with sleet, radio crooning folk tunes that mirrored her nerves. Elena tagged along, her weekend a blur of ferry rides and coffee runs, the Salish sea churning gray below. In the cramped studio off Capitol Hill, amid cables snaking like veins and the hum of monitors, Riley laid down tracks, voice cracking on the first take, then soaring raw emotion bleeding into microphones. Jax paced, nodding approval, but when he suggested tweaks, less ache, more polish, Riley's jaw tightened, fingers clenching the mic stand, the metal cool and unyielding. Elena watched from the booth, heart swelling with pride, but a pang hit as Riley emerged, exhilarated, hugging Jax a beat too long. "This is happening," Riley breathed later, over dim sum in a Pike Place hole in the wall, pork buns steaming between them, the harbor's fishy tang wafting in. But her eyes darted to her phone, buzzing with follow-ups, and Elena felt the shift. A widening gap, subtle as tidal pull. Back in Portland, the strain amplified. Elena's promotion came through. Lead architect on the waterfront, her name etched in emails and plaques, but celebration felt hollow. She surprised Riley at a gig, sliding into a booth at the Rusty Anchor, the air thick with hops and harmony. Riley spotted her mid-set, dedicating a song. For the builder in the crowd, her voice wrapping around lyrics of steadfast love, guitar strings vibrating like heartstrings. The applause thundered, but afterward, in the green room cluttered with posters peeling at edges, Riley's high fizzled into fatigue. "Jax wants revisions tomorrow. Can't tonight." She kissed Elena's cheek, quick as a stage cue, the touch fleeting, leaving lipstick's faint rose scent as a ghost. Elena drove home alone, wipers battling fresh snow, the flakes melting on heated glass like tears. In her loft, she poured a glass of Cabernet, the liquid deep red as autumn leaves, and scrolled through old photos. Riley's grin at their first hike, wind-tousled, their hands intertwined at Thanksgiving, pie crumbs on thumbs. The wine soured on her tongue, doubt fermenting. Was love enough against ambition's grind? February brought a blizzard, blanketing the city in white silence, flights grounded, streets hushed. Elena's sight shut down, forcing her into the office for remote oversight, screens glowing blue against the storm. Riley, snowed in at the shop, texted sporadically, "Miss you in this whiteout," but her voice notes carried strain, rehearsals clashing with recording deadlines. One evening, Elena trudged through drifts to Brew Haven, boots crunching powder, the cafe a beacon of yellow light. Inside, the fire crackled in the corner hearth, casting flickering shadows, the scent of mulled cider weaving through coffee steam. Riley emerged from the back, apron dusted with snow from a delivery run, pulling Elena into the storage room for privacy. "God, I needed this," she murmured, hands framing Elena's hips, mouth claiming hers with desperate hunger. The kiss bruised, teeth grazing lips, bodies grinding against shelves of beans and syrups, bottles rattling softly. Elena's coat hit the floor with a muffled thump, her hand slipping under Riley's shirt, palms flat against the heat of her belly, eliciting a moan that vibrated through them both. They didn't make it home. Quick, fervent against the wall, breaths panting in sync, release a muffled cry into Riley's neck, the world outside forgotten in the blizzard's roar. But passion couldn't bury the growing rift. Over cider by the fire, mug steaming with clove and orange, Riley admitted it. Jax offered a deal, 6 months in Nashville, co-writing with some big names. Her voice was even, but her fingers shredded a napkin, bits fluttering like confetti of indecision. Elena's mug paused mid-sip, the liquid's warmth mocking the chill settling in her veins. 6 months. The words echoed flat, the fire's pop underscoring the void. Riley reached across, hand covering Elena's, knuckles brushing the silver bracelet. It's a launch pad. For us two better gigs stability. But her eyes pleaded, fear lurking like shadows in the flames. Elena pulled back gently, the chair scraping wood. And what about right now? This. She gestured between them, voice cracking, the storm howling outside like her unspoken plea. Riley's face crumpled, a tear tracking down her cheek, glistening. I don't want to lose you. But this dream. It's been my North Star since I was 18, strumming in my Da's garage. The argument simmered low, words like embers, accusations of selfishness, defenses of sacrifice, until Elena stood, coat reclaimed, the door's bell a harsh chime as she fled into the whiteout. Snow stung her face, boots sinking deep, each step a battle against the pull to turn back. Home was a sanctuary of solitude, heater blasting but sleep evaded, her body curled fetal under quilts, the ache a hollow drum. Days blurred, communication reduced to curt texts. Safe travels. Elena from her office staring at frozen river cams. Riley holed up writing, guitar her only confessor. The breaking point came mid-March. Cherry blossoms daring the chill with pink defiance. Elena's firm hosted a gala at the Pearl District Auditorium. Black tie amid blueprints projected like stars. She stood in a sleek emerald gown, silk whispering against her thighs, accepting accolades with a practiced smile, but her eyes scanned for Riley, invited, promised. She didn't show. The text arrived as champagne flutes clinked. Stuck at studio. Love you. Sorry. Elena's grip tightened, glass stem biting palm. A drop of blood welling like accusation. She slipped out early, heels clicking on marble, hailing a cab through budding streets. At Riley's loft, the door yielded to her spare key. The space dim with takeout boxes and sheet music strewn like casualties. Riley looked up from the couch, eyes red-rimmed, guitar silent. You came. Elena dropped her clutch, the thud resonant. I always do. But when do you? Voice broke, tears hot. She closed the distance, collapsing into Riley's lap, sobs racking as arms enveloped her, strong, familiar, trembling. They held on, breath sinking in the wreckage, the city's first spring rain pattering against windows like hesitant applause. I can't lose this, Elena whispered, face buried in Riley's neck, the pulse there frantic. You. Riley's hand stroked her back, circles soothing as rain. Then help me choose. Help us build something that holds. The night stretched, confessions pouring like the downpour. Fears of abandonment, dreams deferred, the terror of half-lives. Dawn crept in, gray light filtering through blinds, finding them entwined on the floor. Blankets scavenged, bodies a map of bruises and tenderness. Riley's voice hoarse sang a new melody. Fragments of compromise, love as the load-bearing beam. But choice demanded action, and as the rain eased, so did the storm within. Elena rose, joints protesting, pulling Riley up with her. Nashville, but not forever. 3 months, pilots, not full flight. Her terms firm as rebar, eyes locking with Riley's, challenging yet yielding. Riley nodded, tears fresh, pulling her into a kiss that sealed it, slow, deliberate, tasting of salt and second chances. The embrace lingered, hands exploring with renewed intent, clothes shedding anew, skin meeting skin in the morning light. Riley's mouth trailed fire down Elena's throat, fingers delving with exquisite slowness, drawing gasps that echoed off brick. Elena reciprocated, lips on the tattooed vines of Riley's arm, tongue tracing notes, body arching as pleasure crested, shared and shattering. In the afterglow, tangled and sated, they planned, visits plotted like site surveys, calls scheduled like beams. Love, they realized, wasn't a finished structure, but ongoing construction, resilient against quakes. Yet fate, capricious as Portland weather, had one more twist. Jax's deal expanded. A tour opening for a indie darling, coasts colliding. Riley wavered, phone in hand, Elena's gaze her compass. We adapt, Elena said, voice steady, hand on heart. Together. The decision landed like first light. Yes to the tour, but with anchors, weekly check-ins, Elena joining for weekends. As spring unfurled, blossoms carpeting paths, their bond deepened, forged in fire's temper. Summer arrived in Portland with a vengeance, sun baking the streets into shimmering mirages, the Willamette lazy and sparkling under blue skies unmarred by clouds. Elena's waterfront project rose from the mud. First beams hoisted with cheers, her designs taking shape in steel and glass, reflecting the river like a promise fulfilled. At 35 now, she moved through the site with authority, hard hat perched on dark waves, clipboard in hand, directing crews with a voice honed by battles won. But her true north was Riley, whose tour kicked off in June. A battered van crisscrossing the Midwest, stages from Chicago dives to Austin patios, her voice carrying further, raw anthems of love's architecture drawing enraptured crowds. Separation tested them like stress loads on a bridge. Elena's days filled with poor schedules and permit chases, nights with video calls, Riley's face pixelated on screen, hotel rooms behind her a blur of neon and anonymity. "Miss your hands," Riley would murmur, voice husky over the lag, fingers tracing the camera as if Elena's skin. They'd talk for hours, Elena recounting a near miss with a delayed shipment, the metallic tang of welding sparks. Riley sharing a sold-out night in Nashville, sweat slick under lights, the roar of applause like thunder. Intimacy adapted, whispered fantasies over speakers, Elena's breath quickening as Riley described touches, the distance a tease that built to shattering releases, moans echoing in separate time zones. But cracks spiderwebbed. A week in July, Elena's phone stayed silent during a heatwave. The loft a sauna despite fans whirring like frustrated bees. Riley's text trickled. "Gig ran late. Exhausted. Love." Elena paced, floorboards creaking under bare feet, the air heavy with the faint ozone of her air purifier. Doubt festered, fed by a late-night scroll through Riley's tour Insta. Fans crowding her after shows, arms slung casual, grins wide. One photo stung. Riley with a backup singer, heads close over mics, laughter frozen in time. Elena's thumb hovered, heart of ice, before closing the app, the screen's glow harsh on unshed tears. She drove to the river at midnight, the Hawthorne Bridge humming with sparse traffic, water below black and oily under moonlight. Leaning on the railing, wind tugging her tank top, she exhaled long. The city's distant pulse a reminder of solitude's bite. Love wasn't blueprints. It was weather, storms passing but scars lingering. Riley called at dawn, voice groggy from a St. Louis motel. "Babe? You okay?" The concern pierced, Elena's resolve crumbling over speakerphone, words spilling. The silence's weight, the photo's phantom jealousy, the fear of fading into tour bus footnotes. Riley's end crackled, then cleared. "That pic? She's straight, married, terrible at harmonies. And the quiet? My head's a mess, imposter vibes hitting hard." A pause, fabric rustling like she was sitting up. "I'm coming back early. One show left, then home. To you." The flight landed sweltering August afternoon. PDX baggage claim a chaos of reunions. Elena waited, heart hammering, sundress clinging in humidity, when Riley emerged, tanned, guitar case slung, eyes scanning, desperate until locking on hers. They collided, bags forgotten, mouths crashing in a kiss salt sweet with travel and relief, hands fisting hair, bodies pressed oblivious to stares. "Never again that long," Riley gasped against Elena's lips, foreheads touching, breaths mingling amid the carousel's beep. They tumbled into Elena's Subaru, windows cracked to fan heat. Riley's hand on Elena's thigh as they sped to the loft, fingers inching higher with each red light, teasing denim seams until Elena swerved laughing into her spot. Upstairs, door barely shut, urgency overtook. Dresses hiked, Riley's mouth hot on Elena's breasts, tongue circling peaks that drew arches and whimpers, hands pinning wrists to walls painted in sunset hues. Elena flipped them, urgency flipping to command, lips trailing down Riley's abdomen, the quiver of muscle under tongue, delving lower to elicit cries that shook the bed frame, waves crashing mutual and merciless, sense of arousal and summer sweat blending intoxicating. Sated sprawled amid rumpled sheets, fans stirring air thick with their joining. Riley traced Elena's bracelet, silver glinting. "Tour's done. Jax wants an album but local, Portland-based, flights for collabs." Her voice tentative, eyes searching. Elena's smile broke wide, hand covering Riley's over the metal. "Good. Because my promotion means more travel site audits in Seattle, maybe Denver. We sync schedules, make it our design. Fall crept in with equinox rains, softer now, pattering like applause on renewed vows. Riley's album sessions filled a North Mississippi Avenue studio, Elena dropping lunches, bento boxes of tamales from Sophia's recipe, wrapped in foil warm as embraces. One afternoon, amid mic checks and chord tweaks, Riley pulled Elena into the booth, door clicking shut, the space intimate with foam walls muffling the world. Sing backup, Riley teased, handing the spare mic, but the song she chose was theirs. A duet penned in blizzard nights, voices blending husky and clear, harmonies weaving like vines. Jax, eavesdropping from the console, grinned wolfish. That's the gold. Raw, real, bottle it. But for them it was more. A testament, voices entwined as lives. Thanksgiving redux brought full circles. Sophia's table groaned under turkey and pozole, Carlos carving with steady hands. But this year Riley arrived not as guest, but kin, helping in the kitchen, chopping cilantro with Sophia's rhythm, laughter shared over singed edges. You've got her glow back, Sophia whispered to Elena later, arms flower-dusted in a hug, eyes knowing. Post-feast, as snow dusted the balcony, Riley and Elena stepped out, city aglow below, mugs of spiced cocoa steaming, cinnamon sharp, marshmallows melting slow. To impossible feelings, Riley toasted, clinking ceramic, her free hand slipping Elena's waistband, thumb circling hip bone in promise. Elena leaned in, kiss lingering, cocoa sweet on tongues. And ignoring nothing. The word sealed it, love not endpoint but horizon, ever building, seismic in its grace. Years later, Elena's tower stood sentinel over the Willamette, sustainable spires housing dreams. Riley's album charted indie waves, tours balanced with home gigs at Brew Haven, now co-owned, counter-etched with their initials under varnish. They married in a forest park clearing, under maples of flame, vows exchanged amid guitar strums and architects' sketches of rings. Simple bands engraved, one sip changes everything. On quiet mornings, coffee steaming between them, hands laced over scarred wood, the feeling remained, impossible no more but eternal, a structure holding against any storm.